so I'm a project coordinator and a sleep practitioner for Nansa. Nansa's a charity. So everything that we run for our preschool children, which is run at our family centre, is funded. So there's always sort of a little bit of worry in the background about whether we're going to get funded again and again and again. At the moment, our sleep service is funded by the Masonic Charitable Foundation, and they have been really, really good. They gave us a really broad criteria, whereas for the first year when we were funded by the CCG, it was really limited. And a lot of people didn't meet it, and we were having to say no to lots and lots of people. But now we can see anyone from the ages of 0 up to 18 with an additional need. And that is left a bit to our flexibility, because actually if sleep is what's being picked up as the problem, we will see that now as an additional need because of the knock-on effects. The knock-on effects to behaviour and learning and ability in all areas is huge. So if that's what they're putting as the problem, we will now look at that and think, actually, if it's not dealt with, it will become an additional need. So we're funded. Up until very recently, we only held clinics on a Monday because it runs alongside all the other things that we do, which obviously meant that we had a very, very long waiting list because there's only so much you can do on a Monday. We have 3 practitioners, all working on a Monday, but we've now expanded, and actually that's probably come about because of the COVID. Other services were put on hold, giving us time to use other days for sleep, but that will now roll on because it's been so beneficial. On lots of counts, we can see more. If parents can't make Mondays, and obviously some parents work and can't make Mondays, it made it very difficult to fit them in for appointments at other times. So we are looking at it becoming much more a weekly thing rather than just a Monday thing. And my hours for sleep have been, I'm doing more hours for sleep now and less hours in something else. Because a lot of the little children we see, the parents are just thinking it's just them, they're not going to sleep, and they've sort of accepted it. But actually we all need sleep. We all need at least 7 hours sleep. And for children, it's sort of anything from 11 to sort of 9, depending on the age. And at 9, you're talking about teenagers, 11 hours for sort of the children that we're seeing, preschoolers. So it's huge, and it's really sad that people just accept it. It goes along with the needs, the additional needs, because the knock-on effect when sleep's happening affects all areas, and they see improvements. Behaviours for ADHD can really be lessened. Really, and until you're getting that sleep, you can't see that. So you're just accepting it as it goes along with the diagnosis. Yes, I'm passionate about sleep. Referrals come from all areas. A lot of them are from the community paediatricians that see the children at Bothwell Road, but also health visitors, GPs, specialist nurses, schools, nurseries. Basically anyone can refer, and parents can self-refer. So they're coming from all directions now. The way it runs is we will have an initial assessment, which lasts for anything up to an hour or beyond. Following that, we put together a tailored sleep program. So we take very much into consideration what's happening in the family, who else is in the family, how it needs to run, because everyone's different. And we will get that to the family the same day. And we will then continue to follow up with support until there is improvement. So initially there would be a fortnightly gap, and then it might go to monthly, but we will very much work on an individual basis with the parents and be there as they need us. It might be that we have to change things. It might be that we have to have another look and think, okay, let's have another look and see what else we can do. But we will stay very much involved with them. As I say, we're now doing it by phone, which at first we thought, will it work, will it not? But actually, we have found it really beneficial, and parents seem to have found it really beneficial as well. I think they're getting so used to all appointments being by phone that it's not it's not daunting. And one of the things that we've always stressed is, if you don't need to, don't bring the child, because we're not making a diagnosis. We're taking what they're telling us about their child. And it's not very nice for a child to sit in a room listening to us talking about them having problems at night. And it doesn't do any good. It's better that they're not there, we feel, for that sort of conversation. The only time we would see them is probably, and it depends on the child and what the diagnosis is, but from 14 up, when they need to be taking on the responsibility and investing in it themselves, then we would invite them in to be part of it. So the age just depends, obviously, on the diagnosis, but obviously teenagers do need to be on board. And it's best that they're part of it, so that you're talking to them and empowering them to make the changes. Yeah, so it's a cognitive behavioural approach. So the idea is, particularly from the medical profession now, that are not wanting to prescribe melatonin if they don't have to. And the idea behind everything that we introduce within a programme is to help the body's natural ability to make melatonin, which most of us can do without any problem. And these children with very busy heads just can't get to that part, you know, that place on their own. So it's very much about looking at behaviours. Sometimes it'll be looking at their whole day, because the behaviours of the whole day can affect sleep. We've got lots of snackers that don't even adhere to sort of meal times, so the body clock is affected. Lots of children that will crash in the day. You become nocturnal very easily if you're not careful. It's very, very tempting to let a child stay in bed until sort of 11, 12 because they've had a terrible night and you need the peace and quiet. But slowly the body clock's all out of sync. So we're looking at what routine is in the day as well. We're looking very much at nighttime not being something to not look forward to, but part of a day that's as special as the rest of it. We're looking at communication. You know, are they understanding what you're saying? Little is probably not. They maybe hear the first message and then block it. So we're very much looking at how can you communicate sleep in a nicer way, in a way that's not going to cause anxiety and stress from the very minute that you start to look at bedtime. So it's a behavioural approach, and it's aimed at helping the child to get there naturally without the need for medication. Sometimes it will complement it. Sometimes medication may be needed, but it doesn't solve the problem, the medication. It's still there. So it's still worth them working with us on a programme, even if melatonin's been prescribed. Obviously, we don't prescribe ourselves. So I think I probably told you most of what we are. I mean, we've all been trained by the Sleep Charity, which was founded by Victoria Dawson, who has written very, very good books on sleep. She's also produced lots of training materials for Scope and does national press and presentations at conferences all over the UK. And we're continually being topped up with our sort of training and learning from her or from the Sleep Charity. It's normally her personally. So it's an expanding thing. I think generally everyone's becoming more aware of the importance of sleep, particularly for these children that are struggling and struggling in school. It's ongoing. And I think probably, although we are a preschool setting, probably with our sleep service, we're seeing more secondary school children or 9 onwards that are really, really, our parents are at the wit's end by then, I think, and the children are very set in their ways. So it's quite challenging. We're empowering the parents to implement a programme.
Could you give us some examples of sort of the sleep issues that parents come to you with, just to give our family an idea?
Okay, so we're looking at settling, length of time to settle, night wakings and early morning wakings. The biggest being the settling. Mm-hmm. So a lot of children, whether it be fear or just getting into a bad habit, don't settle on their own. So the whole bedtime routine takes a long while anyway, and then the parents are having to stay there. That will almost certainly pan out with night wakings, because the child's sleep is very anxious. If you need someone there at the point of sleep, you're constantly trying to keep alert to make sure they're still there. And the sleep cycle that we go through, so we go through a sleep cycle many times through the night, especially for a little one. It can last for about 90 minutes to 2 hours is a sleep cycle. In the lighter part of that, the child becomes aware that you've turned the light off, mum's not there, and they wake. A child that's feeling confident and happy about bed and settles will just naturally turn over, resettle, and it's a natural process. But children that have not learned to do that, or are anxious or disliking sleep for any way, attachment is a big thing. It's a lonely time, so attachment is a big thing. So we do what we do, we stay with them to help them settle, and then all sorts of problems come from that, and night wakings. And so that is often for the little is the first thing we have to address, is how are we going to get them to manage to stay in the bed without you there. And actually, if the parents are able to implement the program, which obviously initially isn't going to be easy because you're breaking habits, and we never ever say let them cry out. That's a big no. They shouldn't cry out. You need to stay very close to keep reassuring. But actually 2 weeks of putting something into practice, you will see results. Because by then the child's beginning to realise, and a child feels safer when a boundary and something is put in place. And initially they're all over the place, it's not what they want, and their behaviour can spike and you think this isn't going to work. But I always sort of say to parents that, think about all their emotions and everything are in a jar, and you're keeping that nice and sort of safe by the boundaries you put in place that a child needs. You take those boundaries away, it's like taking a jar away and everything falls out and they don't know where they are. So the stability that you're doing will work and will make them feel safe and will make them happier. You've just got to push through that initial bit. So that's very much so for the younger ones, that might be the huge issue. For older ones, I think it's amazing how many just come in from school, go up to a bedroom, so they're isolating themselves, strip off and put pajamas on, everything from pajamas on in the bedroom, and doing whatever they're doing. And obviously often it's iPads or phones. Might come down for dinner, might not, might come and get it and take it back up. And then at some point you're calling up saying, right, time to get into bed. There's no way that body's going to want to sleep or be ready for sleep. It's been in that environment. There's been no gradual getting sleepy. You're doing one thing in the bedroom 1 minute, you're not going to feel like curling up in bed the next. So I have behaviours like that.
Sorry, I have a question from Louise. She's put, it's very hard when siblings share a room. My 12-year-old cannot unwind easily without medication, but she keeps my son awake. What can you do to help the sibling?
Okay, it is a hard one, and it depends on age. I mean, often if it is a hard one. It depends which one, whether the sibling's younger or older, obviously. With all the sleep routines that we put in place, it's very much a family thing. It can be it benefits anyone. It benefits you before you get the sleep problems. So if we're talking about a calm time that needs to happen prior to bed, and often people say, oh, we have a quiet time, we have a story. A story won't do it in itself. It's about fine motor skill activities that help them to engage in something that's going to take their mind where we want it to be. So it's the fine motor skill activities and hand-eye coordination activities that has been found to help the melatonin kick in. So it's nice things at the end of the day that you can easily do as a family if the ages are suitable.
Sorry, the sibling is 8.
The sibling is 8. And how old's the little one with the sleep problems?
12.
12, so he's the older one. So I'm guessing the sibling's probably up ahead of the 12-year-old. I don't know, without sort of going into it and knowing what the 12-year-old is actually doing, it's hard for me to say. And if medication is working, then we would be saying, keep the medication in place while you work with a program. And if we can then get him into a better place for when he's in bed, you might be able to stop the medication. Medication often stops working anyway. Eventually, they seem to get used to it. Medication doesn't always work if some of the things that are going on with taking the medication aren't helpful to sleep. So, for instance, it's no good taking the medication and staying in your iPad and thinking you're just going to suddenly fall asleep. So actually what we suggest and what we advise goes very much hand in hand. And some children do need medication.
We have a break from the medication because I find after about 4 weeks it loses its effectiveness.
Yes.
So we have a break from it. But the problem is that my son's the young one. He sleeps like a log. Like he can just go off, but she will wake him, and that's really hard. We have a temporary division in the bedroom. Okay. It's a bedroom, but she will just go in and wake him up, and that really unsettles him. And then he gets cross, and then they argue.
Okay. So at the point of her going to bed, she's not sleepy at all?
Yeah.
Not even with the medication?
Sometimes. It's hit and miss. It really is hit and miss.
Yeah.
Sometimes with the medication, she'll be off within an hour, but then sometimes on a really bad night, it can be 2 hours. So then we've tried putting her to bed at 8, but of course that doesn't work. So it is very, it's very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. Without going into more detail, I could give you sort of lots of advice of things that you're doing with your daughter. Is it your daughter that's got the sleep problem? Yeah. There are sort of lots of things, but I think the temptation is and the need is, well, we better not send her yet because she's going to wake her brother up. So her bedtime's sort of expanding, and she obviously knows that. This is good. I can stay up a bit longer because I'm, they're not going to want me to go in there and wake my brother up. See, it's a bit of a vicious circle. But what you're doing with her during the hour before you want her to go to bed is quite key. What does she do up until bedtime?
TV, to be honest.
Yeah. Is there anything that she would engage in? Is she a child that you can manage to get to engage in an activity?
It's hard, but I could probably try and encourage her away.
Like beading?
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Like that.
Something that she would enjoy. So just briefly, obviously, I can give you a lot more help if I had a consultation with you. But just briefly, if you think about when you're going to give her the medication, which needs to be within the hour before you want her to go to bed. During that hour, so you give her medication, and then during that hour, TV's off. If she's got an iPad or a phone, they need to go away, and she needs to be part of that so that she knows this is what's happening now. So you need to decide on the time that's going to happen. Then just have a few things in a box, a special box, so she'll relate it to this time of day that will complement the activities needed to help the melatonin kick in. So you've got to create a very calm environment for her. It can feel daunting for the parents because by that time of night you might be wanting to just sit and click into the telly and relax, but it can be a relaxing time, and it can be a very rewarding time, and you can sit there with a cup of tea, but you will need to be there to sort of support her. And just put in this box a few things for her to choose for that time of night, so it becomes something she looks forward to, and it will be doing, subconsciously, you won't see it happening, but it will be helping her to become focused on something that will help her to become sleepy. That will work with the medication to have her in a better place.
Thank you. That's brilliant. No,
and I'd also make it quite a structured time so that she knows that her behavior isn't going to make a difference to when it's bedtime.
Thank you. Helpful.
And would Louise also be able to refer into your service if she needed any support?
Definitely. Yeah,
that's really good.
Yeah, you can do that yourself, so that you don't need to go to your GP or anything. You can self-refer. We could give you a bit more then, but and also what I would, I don't know your daughter without talking to you in more depth to see how her behavior is. And another thing that's a bit trying for you, but staying close to avoid any of the sort of getting out of bed and getting to the point where she's reached her brother is quite important, just to get that message across that you're not expecting that to happen.
Definitely.
But what happens in that hour, if you can keep it all calm and have the bedroom ready for her, everything should have clicked in. She should be in a better place to sleep by then.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll try that. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have another question from Johnny. So what are some helpful hand-eye coordination activities?
Okay, so depending on age, so it's quite easy with the younger ones. You're looking at posting, stacking, building, Play-Doh, puzzles, that sort of small figures. If they're children that really struggle to engage, we often suggest just a little tray with some dried rice and something to fill and pour from. So a sensory tray with that sort of thing. And that's often needed for the children that aren't engaging in play very well. For the older children, things like Rubik's Cubes, any art and craft type thing. Girls in particular, there's lots of sort of beading and jewelry making, model making, so sort of clay type things, dot to dots, colouring by numbers, but even games with a family member, as long as they're a child that's not going to get too anxious or cross if they don't win. So you got to play that, but you know, things like pairs and things like that are quite good. Yeah, but we do have a whole list of things that they can do that helps relaxation. So, and it does get a bit harder as they get to teens because they're not into any of that anymore. It's, you know, it's all iPads and things like that.
And would it be possible to have a copy of that, or is that on your website, the list of activities?
This one isn't. We are at the moment in the process because lots of people are asking. So we do have information packs, which we tend to hand out when they come into us, which are quite detailed and go along with what we do. And we're trying to condense it now so that we've got a flyer with basic stuff on that could be handed out prior or instead of them sort of accessing us. This is quite detailed. So we're looking at how can we take the stuff out. They're going ages. We've got three, so 0 to 5, 5 to 11, and 12 up to 18. And they do have lots of ideas. So we're just looking at how we can take bits from it so that we're not giving out the whole pack, but we're giving some really useful sort of tips to sort of help.
And can I ask what kind of things you would do for it? So if you've got a child that you can't leave, they want you to stay in their bedroom until they've gone to sleep. Yeah. What sort of tips and advice could you give for that?
Okay. So there are different approaches. The quickest, but maybe the more difficult one initially, is the rapid return. So everything that goes on prior to you getting them to bed is aimed at them being in a better place by the time they're in bed. So it's it should become a little bit easier. But you do then settle with a very firm, reassuring tucking in action that you can keep repeating. So just a very quick good night message and a nice snugly tuck in, and you leave the room, but you stay near enough to get back before they manage to get out and come. So it's initially that is quite tiring. It's quite nice when there's you know, if there's two parents or two people able to be part of that, because if it gets too much for one or you're about to lose it, you can swap. They get the message very quickly that way, although initially it's very difficult for the parents, but they do get the message, and it is a message that we're giving them. It's bedtime, you're all right, you need to stay in bed. So that would be the first. And you can think about what is it about the need for you there? What is it that they actually need? Is it you physically there? Is it just the whole thing about nighttime? Would something of yours with them be enough to offer them some comfort? So a pillow or something that you've laid on. So we have to go into it a bit just to make sure where the attachment is and where the issue is from. But ultimately, all children can learn to self-settle, and they can be helped to realise that they don't need you there. So that would be one. There's the coming out of the room slowly. So initially we would say go from actually physically holding the child to just sitting near. So no hand contact or anything, but moving your chair gradually away. So we call it the gradual retreat. Can take a long while. Slowly over a period of time you move until you're out the door. So some parents find that easier to do because the whole initial bit's easier, but it's longer, much longer. They're the main things. So it's just looking at what are they using as supports for sleep. You know, you've become a sleep support, which we want to try and remove. And it's very easy for that to happen. And I think when there's an additional need, parents are worried about what's the child understanding and why they need it. Whereas if that additional need isn't there, we often have to come to that point and we just do it. We just think, right, we're going to do it now. We need to break this habit. It's harder when there's an additional need. We would almost certainly be saying use visual aids for your child, to have pictures, reassure them that, you know, there's no good saying to a child that's not really listening or able to retain the words, you need to be in bed, it's bedtime, you need to sleep, it's lost, you're getting het up, they're cutting off, and everything just spirals. So we always say keep your verbal message minimal, but have pictures to show. A picture stays with a child and it gives a much more reassuring message than our words alone. So if particularly if your child's not communicating, don't have a long sentence with them. You know, it's lost, and they don't understand that they need to sleep. And so just some good pictures.